Hey, Bridge Street, Jason here. I was thinking leaders like myself, or your teachers, or sometimes our pastors or our parents will say something to you that we might think is easy or straightforward, but is actually really quite complex. And it might be so complex that your face will do all kinds of crazy things, like somebody will say something and your complex and your face will go, huh? Or your jaw will just drop and your eyes will glaze over and it'll be like, I have two examples of this. That have happened to me in my life that I could think of. The first one is something called imaginary numbers. Yes, you heard that right. Imaginary numbers. It's something that is actually quite easy. But the first time I heard it, my face went like this. Okay? Google it if you don't believe that imaginary numbers exist. Second thing that made my jaw drop, my eyes glaze over because I was bombarded with so much information, I didn't know what to do. I was talking to a young man and used to be one of our Bridge Streeters, and I said to him, wouldn't it be cool if you and I could figure out how to make a rock like this, all shiny and smooth, and turn it into a rock like this? And next thing I know, he starts talking about different chemicals and different pieces of equipment you could buy to do that. And it was really easy and my jaw dropped. And I was like, I don't even know what you're saying because it's just too complex for me. And sometimes we do that. And today I was going to talk about something that church leaders often say. We'll say God's grace. God's grace is a free gift. All you have to do is receive it. And until I was about 42 years old, my jaw would drop, my eyes would glaze over, and I'd be like, I don't know what that means. What is God's grace? Are you talking about the prayer I say before dinner? I don't know. I just don't know. Well, let me tell you, we had an awesome worksheet that we did on a Sunday in Bridge Street all about what God's grace was. Here it is. Go ahead, screenshot it, pause the video, screenshot it, and now you have it too. All right, God's grace. It starts off with one simple fact. We all mess up. No one has it all together. And when I say we all mess up, I mean I mess up, our pastors mess up, your teachers mess up, your parents and relatives mess up, the person that brings you to church messes up. When I say we all mess up, we all mess up. Every single one of us. Now, with that truth and that fact, the rest of the story for God's grace is we don't have to do good things to make up for the things we did wrong for God. God's not walking around with a little bucket, putting a drop of water in one bucket, saying bad things you did, and a drop of water in a bucket that says good things you've done. And at the end of your life, he's not going to weigh those buckets to see what weighs more, the good or the bad. He's not going to do that. You don't have to do everything perfectly to fit in with God either. This is all about God's grace. This is what it means. You don't have to do everything perfect to fit in with God. You know what else? There is nothing you can do to make God love you more or less. And that one is really hard to understand because we live in this world where people do mean things to us and that affects how we feel about them. For God, it doesn't. It doesn't matter what we do, God is not going to love us more or less. And lastly, God loves you and accepts you no matter what you've done, no matter what. Now, Mr. Jason is not a perfect person and Mr. Jason has done some mean things to people sometimes. I'll admit it. And you know what? God doesn't love me any less because sometimes I'm mean and say mean things to people. God knows that I mess up. God knows that I don't have it all together. And God knows that you don't have it all together too. But you know what? And that's what God's grace is. Now that you have a screenshot of what God's grace is that I showed you on that worksheet, ask the person that brings you to church, what's the most difficult thing on this sheet for them to understand?